Okay, question number 12 on our test 3 review for Math 1105 has a lot of parts to it. Basically, you're given a quadratic function. You're going to be asked to find the vertex by hand. We're going to use the vertex formula. We're asked to then state the axis of symmetry, find the y-intercepts of the graph by hand, locate the zeros of the function by hand, piece a graph together from that information, and then once we're looking at the graph, we're going to discuss the relative extrema. That means the maximum or minimum, relative max or min values, and then we're also going to state the domain and range. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at our function. We have the quadratic function f of x equals the opposite of x squared plus 2x plus 8. Now, probably the most important point on a parabola is the vertex. That's the turning point where the graph turns. Okay, that is part A. We are asked to find the vertex of this parabola. Now, the first thing I want you to remember is the vertex has two coordinates, the x and the y. One fact that you need to remember: the x coordinate of the vertex is equal to the opposite of b over 2a. So in this particular problem, it's the opposite of, let's look at our function. b is 2, and then 2 times a, and when I look at my function, a is negative 1. So when I evaluate that, this turns out to be a positive 1. So the x-coordinate of my vertex is 1. To get the y-coordinate of my vertex, I plug into the function. I find f of 1. And that would be the opposite of 1 squared plus 2 times 1 plus 8. Okay, so that would be 1 squared is 1. The opposite of that is negative 1, plus 2, plus 8, and that turns out to be 9. So my vertex of my parabola is the ordered pair 1, 9, and I found that by using the vertex formula. Part B of the question asks us to state the axis of symmetry. Now, the axis of symmetry of a parabola that's a function is the vertical line that goes directly through the vertex. Well, the vertical line that goes through the vertex, okay, if I have a vertical line, any vertical line as its equation has the letter x in it. X equals, and in this case, the x-coordinate of the vertex is 1, so the axis of symmetry is x equals 1. For any parabola, the axis of symmetry is always going to be the equation that contains the letter x, of course the equal sign, and the x-coordinate of the vertex. Because the vertex is the place that if you drew a vertical line through it, the graph is split symmetrically. Part C asks me to find the y-intercept. Okay? Now we basically have the function here, y equals the opposite of x squared plus 2x plus 8. To find the y-intercept, remember the y-intercept is the place where x is 0. So it's an ordered pair whose x value is 0. Well, if I put 0 in for x, those drop out and I'm just left with 8. So the ordered pair 0, 8 is my y-intercept. Finding the y-intercept is pretty easy to find. You simply replace x with 0. Now, part D is a little harder to find, a little more work. Part D asks us to find the zeros of the function. Now, remember, the function is f of x equals the opposite of x squared plus 2x plus 8. To find the zeros of a function, you set y equal to 0. So in other words, the opposite of x squared plus 2x plus 8 equals 0. I need to solve that equation. I personally like the lead term when I'm solving an equation to be positive, so I'm going to multiply everything by -1. That gives me x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. This factors as x minus 4 times x plus 2. This factor becomes 0 when x is 4. This factor becomes 0 when x is -2. So the zeros of my function are 4 and -2. Okay? Now, what we're asked to do next in part E, alright, come with me to my paper. In part E, we're asked to take all of that information and draw a graph. So let's recall what our information was. The vertex was the ordered pair 1, 9. So x is 1, y is 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So my vertex is located right there in quadrant 1. That's my turning point. My y-intercept is the ordered pair 0, 8. So that's there on the y-axis, of course. And we have 2 zeros. The zeros of the function, 1, 2, 3, 4, is a place where the graph crosses the x-axis. That's a 0 of the function. And also at -2. So now it's sort of a connect the dots game. We make our parabola obviously open down. It crosses the y-axis there and the x-axis. I'll make my point bigger. I kind of missed it. There we go. And then it crosses crosses the x-axis there as well. So this is a good picture of my graph by piecing together the data. Now, part F asks me to discuss the relative extrema. In other words, I want to know what the relative maximum value is, and I want to know what the relative minimum value is. Now remember, relative max and min refer to the y value. If I look at this graph and I look for the relative maximum, I'm kind of looking for the king of the hill. The hill is up here at the vertex, which is the ordered pair 1, 9. The y value there is the number 9. So my relative maximum value is equal to 9. A relative maximum value is a y value. And in fact, in this graph, not only is it a relative, but it's a maximum, meaning it is the largest y value. Relative minimum value, in this particular case, there is none. And the reason is the graph keeps dropping lower and lower and lower. Okay? Sometimes none is a perfectly correct answer. There are times that you'll see somebody write as an answer negative infinity, which just means the y value is going to negative infinity. At this point, none is a perfectly acceptable answer. And then part G, we're asked for the domain and the range. Well, let's remember how we find those. To find the domain of a graph, we scan from left to right. And remember, in this particular parabola, the branches are getting wider and wider and wider. So as I scan from left to right, I'm actually scanning from negative infinity to positive infinity. To scan for range, which is my y value, we scan from bottom to top. Okay? To get range, you scan from bottom to top. So we're coming from negative infinity, and notice when we end our scan, we're right up here at the tippy top, which is the vertex, and the y value there is 9. And I include that